you find the accused guilty, the bench
All right,
will
I'm live. Welcome to my 12 Angry Men live stream. We're going to look at
in this case.
several shots, actually video clips from this. I've actually never done video clips on my live stream, so hopefully the tech works out. I think it does. This should be fun, but let me know if the volumes don't work in the chat. By the way, check out the chat. There's lots of great people on the chat saying many different things. Feel free to ask questions, whatever you want. My Substack, my Letterboxd, etc. So 12 Angry Men. I want to take a look at this movie and just how it's constructed, actually how it makes people like it. That's such an interesting question. Like, how does a movie make you like it? Fascinating question. I think it's psychological. Some of it is, at least. And so if I do, show you 12 Angry Men here, this is Letterboxd, obviously. Well, maybe you don't know what Letterboxd is. It's a nice social site which we all can follow each other and look at different movies and see what we say about them. But Letterboxd, the graph, you get down here, is amazing. 4.5 stars. That's so many people rating this 5 stars out of 5. Unbelievable. And of course, maybe you know this. I looked it up. It's been this way for a while. 12 Angry Men is in the top 5 on IMDb.com. That IMDb has been around a long time. And it's one of the few movies from the mid 20th century that is in the top 250. There are a few, like Psycho, probably Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. But most of the movies on IMDb are from the last 30 years in the top 250. 12 Angry Men survives, and it doesn't have a lot of action in it. It's not like Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, where there's shooting, violence, tough guys doing tough things. It's, it is just straightforward. Well, I got my volume on here. It's just straightforward. 12 Angry Men is straightforward drama about a courtroom scene in which, as you probably know, there's one guy who wants to vote not guilty and the 11 others want to vote guilty. So what is this movie about? Why do so many people love it and love it so much they put it in the top 5 on IMDb and they're just loving it on Letterboxd? Those are my giant questions. So I want to go through the movie and look at its, let me fix this. Look at its quality. There it is playing in the background. I'm sorry I had the volume of it on. I'm going to put myself here. And we're going to look at this. A few of the shots from 12 Angry Men. This is the opening shot of 12 Angry Men. So we'll come back and look at it in a little bit and see, why is this the first shot? What's going on in it? How is it creating its world? How is it persuading you to like it? Those are some of my giant questions for this. But let's do this. Let me get to this is the jury, right? And so these are our first shots of the 12 actual angry men on the jury. Let's go back a little bit here. Let me get my hotkeys right. And this right here is the first shot of the 12 men. It ends up being the third shot of the movie. So I will show you shots 1 and shots 2 in just a minute. They're fascinating to me. But this is our first look at the 12 dudes. The 12, should I call them 12 bros? They're 12 ordinary white guys. And this is a dimension in the movie that matters. 12 white guys, middle class, maybe upper class, maybe a couple of them are, who are deciding the fate of I think he's Hispanic, a guy accused of murder. And he's one of them in the movie, as some of them call it. He's part of the slums. So the class and race dynamic are here for the United States in the mid-1950s. Civil rights issues galore in this movie. And then, of course, the giant questions of, why do we do the law this way? Why do we have juries? What's reasonable doubt? When do we take people and send them to the electric chair? And when do we... when do we accuse them of guilt? So these are 12 guys, right? So let's play this a little bit. And if you look at what's going on in this clip, you can clearly see the beginnings of the creation of characters here, even if you don't know it. It doesn't register with your brain the first time you watch it, but all 12 characters are being created right now for you in this very shot. Their personalities, their interests, their likes, their dislikes, all that. Oh, here's the next shot, which is the camera is moving across them, and you're going to see them one by one individually. Actually, I don't want to do this just yet. Let's go back. and then go forward to the shot again. And just take a look at what I'm saying. So, by the way, if you've never seen the movie, this video might be a little hard to follow, although I think it can prep you for that. By the way, people in the comments, is everything working tech-wise and so on? Let me know. This shot, though, has all the jurors in it, those of you who've seen the movie. And we see right here, actually, I don't have a mouse, so I'm just going to point out, right in the middle, you see Lee Cobb, actually the stockbroker to his right or left, who has glasses on. He looks upright. He has a tie. Right? That's the stockbroker. Both him and the guy to his left, the Lee Cobb character, that's the name of the actor, are the two holdouts late in the movie for guilty. Everybody else is going to be not guilty later in the movie. Well, I think that's the way it works. At least 2 or 3 of them. In fact, the 3 of them who are not guilty in the end are sitting there clumped together. The old bigot in the back, played by Ed Begley, who looks like he's not even paying attention. He's the guy who kind of has his head back. I think he's having allergies right now. And then the 2 guys in front of him, the stockbroker with glasses, and the glasses become an important part of the movie later on. Can you see or not see the truth? And that's a metaphor with the glasses, the evidence for the glasses later in the movie. And then the Lee Cobb character. All those 3 guys are clumped together. We're going to be not guilty, or going to be guilty, right? Now, another guy to notice is Henry Fonda, who plays Davis. I can't remember his juror number, but there he is, and he's wearing white. And he's sort of standing out in a way, if you look hard enough. He's like right there, looking down, contemplative pose. The pose of a thinker. So he's got his hand up, and he's looking down, and you might think he's sleeping right now, but later in the movie, in fact, in a few shots, we know he's not. He's actually thinking about the case, contemplating it. And this movie is about contemplation versus action. You know, contemplation, or the not guilty vote versus the guilty vote. So there he is, and he's definitely distinctive in terms of clothing in this movie. But he's also distinctive in terms of the way he looks. Now, he's sitting next to the pinstripe suit guy, who's going to be the sports fan who wants to get the heck out of the jury room in order to get to his baseball game. So these 2 kinds of American types or contrasts, or general types. The thinking man, the architect, the guy who can build stuff, obviously. Davis, who says not guilty. And then the sports fan, who is just a mass spectator, whose desires are up front, and he says, let's just consume. So anyway, those 2 guys are sitting together right there. Of course, the 2 first not guilty votes are sitting together. The wise old man and Davis, the wise old man, whose name I'm forgetting, he comes at the end, but then the 2 old men are sitting there together, 2 different types of old men. Anyway, what do we see in this whole shot? You see the judge in the foreground, the stenographer, and then a couple of extras are going to be dismissed, and the judge is talking right now. In fact, we can listen to what the judge says. Let's see if this works. Let's play this. The judge, hopefully you can hear me as the judge talks. The judge is just as bored as possible with the case. And while he's talking, he's sweating. That brings up the hotness of this whole scene. And he's going to take a drink of water in a minute. These guys lack water. There's rain in the movie. Oh, and here we see this sort of tracking shot where they go across the guys and see each one as they are and the personalities. There's the Lee Cobb. They're right there in the middle of the frame. You see the guilty and not guilty sides. And then the stockbroker there. Guy with allergies. We know he's going to have allergies. There's a guy from the slums. Jack Klugman, I think is the name of the actor. And then the end of the bench right here. Some of this has significance, and some of these guys will be linked together. Now here's the judge, and he's bored. And he's going to take a drink of water, which I find fascinating, as I said, because water becomes a big part of the movie. Do we have enough water? No, there's not enough. The water of life kinds of metaphors. Are we going to give this guy what he deserves, punishment, or are we going to let him go and let him live? All those kinds of questions. Now here the jurors are being dismissed, and we have this stenographer in front. So it's kind of shielding us from these 12 guys. As this changes from 14 to 12, this guy is sort of a curtain, put across them, and then he's going to sit back down. We'll see the 12 guys as they are. And then they get ready to leave, and you see the guilty. Look who's standing up right now. The 2 really strong bigots in the movie of all these guys who just hate the accused, but also then the main character, the foreman, right here, and then the main character Davis standing up. So anyway, this is the jury, and here's the accused, who we'll see, and like this shot right here, because some of them look back at him, indicating we should care about this kid. And then there he is in close shot. First close shot of the movie is not one of the 12 jurors. It's the accused, and then this very, 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 very long dissolve, as if his ghost or his image is haunting this courtroom or this jury room, deliberation room right there. All right, so we'll take a look at that again in just a minute. Let's return here. Could I up the? Yeah, I will do that. They want me to increase the volume of the clip. By the way, this video is getting demonetized, so feel free to subscribe to my free Substack, Letterboxd, whatever, just to support the channel, because I'm not getting money from this. All right, so let's look at this. This is the opening shot of the movie. Fascinating shot. It's just a regular old establishment shot. It's the courthouse itself, the place of deliberation. Now, this movie is almost a single-room movie in which we sit in the courthouse the entire time. And we are in this very location the entire time, sometimes looking out from it. It has this feel of dominance, though, because it's a low angle looking up at this giant courthouse, solidified, classical architecture, Greco-Roman architecture. Of course, as I said, the main character who's not guilty, who leads the jury from guilty to not guilty, is an architect. That's going to be a major metaphor in this whole movie. We're looking at, let's go back a little bit. I want to get the very, very, very beginning of this shot. There it is. You know, the shot feels a little crooked to me. I don't know if that's just an artifact from the camera. I could be wrong. It feels a little tilted, if you want to look at it, just slightly to the left. I don't know if that means things are slightly off kilter or slightly warped. It's not this stable, perfectly symmetrical shot as it could be. But it is at least centered and somewhat symmetrical looking. I think that's a metaphor. You know, it's like the jury, a law is good, deliberation is good, but something's going to be off about this particular deliberation. At least that's the way I look at this. Anyway, the first shot of the movie goes up. The second shot will come back down. And this brings us all the way up to the tippy top, making us feel smaller and at the mercy of the giant court system there. I'm going to pause it. Yes, got it. There's the top of the building. It's going to cut right here. And there you can definitely see that something's crooked about this shot. And it's not as symmetrical as it could be. As with the case of the accused, something's a little off with this case. It looks straightforward. It looks like he's guilty, but then we have a lot of reasonable doubt in this movie. Now, I will say this about this movie. Maybe most people don't know this. You don't know whether the guy is really guilty or really not guilty by the end of the movie. You just have reasonable doubt. By the end of the movie, Davis, the Henry Fonda character, has no clue whether the guy is guilty or not. And that's the nature of the American, maybe all justice systems, the American justice system, is when you let a person off and say not guilty who is accused, it's just reasonable doubt you're basing that on. This movie is very didactic, teaching everybody. It's probably upholding to some extent, you know, the idea that of what the American court system is about, what its values are. What is reasonable doubt? And it's all goes to say that just a couple of pieces of evidence that are off mean you say not guilty, you know. But yet, Davis and everybody else could be letting off a murderer. You have to keep that very fact, that tension in mind, because at the end of the movie, it's going to pick up on this, and we'll show the end of the movie. I think that's coming up here at the beginning, though. Things are off. It says administration of justice is the firmest pillar of good. That's just as moralistic and didactic and legalistic as, you know, as you can get. But what is good letting off a potential murderer, you know. By the end of this movie, you can say, yeah, they didn't have great evidence for this kid doing the murder, so let's let him go. But we don't know who did it in the end. You know, nothing is satisfied in a sense. Justice is not completely done in the end. And that reasonable doubt is doubt, not certainty. So the firmest pillar is tilted here in this shot. By the way, the shot ends right here. It cuts as we get just above the tippy top of the building, indicate there's a sky, the heavens above. Who knows if there's some kind of hierarchical order here in God or something else is above the legal system. But this whole building signifies, in my view, what's going on in this movie. We cut to the next shot. This is the long second shot. Now, this movie is static a lot of time. It doesn't move around. It's just in one room. But this particular second shot will move all over the place. It will go everywhere through the whole courthouse. And I love that it cuts from that ascending shot that goes up, tippy top of this sort of Greco-Roman architecture, Firmus Pillar of Good sky stuff. Then you get the literal Roman Byzantine right there, if you can read them. And then what looks like frescoes or something at the top of that. Maybe it's a cupola, the top of this interior part of the building. And we've obviously cut inside the interior, but that reminder again of the Greco-Roman tradition, and that's what's going on here. And this is the continued interpretation of that tradition. Is we're going to go up, and then we go inside. We come back down, right? Come back down to the level of everybody. Let's make sure I can get the volume up here. I hope the volume's okay again. Yeah, somebody in the comments says it's better that 10, and I think this is a quote from the movie, better than 10 guilty persons escape than one innocent suffer. I think it goes up, and it goes up to the top, and that's art and culture and Greco-Roman tradition comes down to the people. The actual living embodied people. And this shot, I'm just going to play it, get demonetized, follows this guy. Ordinary guy we'll never see again. And that's what I say, this shot is dynamic, whereas the rest of this movie is fairly static. It picks up on this guy, it follows him over here, different parts of the courtroom. This guy over here, these are people who are not part of the movie, they're extras. And we follow this shot all the way up. There's a gang of guys right there, and maybe congratulating somebody getting off or not, but then there's a minister of the law, and then we get to the courtroom. Another kind of establishment shot. We're going to go inside this very room, and this is where the courtroom is. We just saw it. And so we have this here. I'll play this again.
Premeditated murder is the most serious charge tried in our criminal courts. You've listened to the testimony. You've had the law read to you and interpreted as it applies.
You'll notice, by the way, I'm pausing it again, the foreman who's sitting there with his hand over his mouth is listening intently. That guy is very interesting in this movie. By the way, behind him is a sports fan who is not paying any attention. Right? So all the 12 character types, all the different types of people who are going to be in this deliberation room, as I said, are set up. The foreman has an interesting job because he's a leader of the masses, a leader of a democracy. And while he's a leader, he's not the leader in terms of intellect. He's not leading in terms of rationalizing or thinking through guilty versus not guilty. He's just in charge of the systems that would keep the jury deliberating. But yet here he is paying attention. And then, so look at all the guys and who's paying attention and who's not. It kind of sort of aligns with who's going to say not guilty first initially, and who's going to say not guilty last. It tends to be the guys who are not paying attention right now, at least in this particular shot, are going to say, are going to hold off and not say not guilty. If they're paying attention, they're going to say not guilty, except for our White Knight Davis character. Again, more water there, the books up here.
Fancy. One man is dead. Another man's life is at stake. If there's a reasonable doubt in your minds as to the guilt of the accused,
Someone's asking, is this the Criterion Blu-ray? I think it is. I don't have it with me, but yeah, I think it is. And it's the best way to watch this movie. It's very crisp looking. There's our sports fan again, not paying attention. And clothing makes a huge difference in this movie. Maybe we have totally different clothing values. I don't know. But the pinstripe suit, he's sort of gimmicky, comic-y. That it's not the dress of a sophisticated man. As the stockbroker will have he's probably the best dressed guy of them all. But Davis, he's dressed for the day because it's hot. He's wearing a white suit. I always call him a white knight figure because that's what he kind of is. By the way, there you can see he's married. I love it when the characters hold up their ring finger, and so that something about them. Maybe you never picked up on that, but yeah, he's married. Does that matter or not? I don't know, but all those little details, because the little details of the evidence matter later in the movie, every little detail in the shots matter, as it turns out.
And you must
There's
prove
Lee
the
Cobb
verdict
not caring.
Now, if, however, there's no reasonable doubt, then you must
Very angry.
find the accused guilty.
Stockbroker. You always know, by the way, a guy is not the hero when he's got some kind of disease or illness, or here this guy who has allergies, Ed Begley. I call him the old bigot, is, always sneezing or it just perfect health or good health means goodness usually in movies for whatever reason, and imperfect health means the opposite.
Must be unanimous. In the event that you find the accused guilty, the bench will not entertain a recommendation for mercy. The death sentence is mandatory in this case.
What? Oh, I missed it. But the Jack Klugman characters from the slums just turned and looked at the accused there in that last shot, which is fascinating because he's the one who aligns with him in terms of the socioeconomic setting. There's one juror who knows about slums here really well because he's lived there all his life. That's the character who just looked at the accused right there. I love that the judge looks bored. Like, who wouldn't be bored in jury deliberation, at all, or in a courtroom? This guy is. We just saw that the administration of justice is the firmest pillar of good, but then we see that the people who administer justice are bored out of their minds.
Stability. Thank you, gentlemen.
The alternate jurors are excused.
So he saw this, and again, I make a big deal of the water, but the books in the front are really important. Like, there's the law, there's what is the basis of the law. I don't even know what those books are, but everything sitting there on the judge's desk indicates various aspects of the rationalization or thinking process in this movie. I feel like between the books, the pens, are there glasses? Yeah, there are glasses sitting there, the clock, and the water. All those have to do with the deliberation and thinking and being a real, a thinking person. I'm reading the comments. Lee Cobb, the photo of the wallet becomes a big deal later on, doesn't it? Anyway.
The jury will now retire.
Now watch these jurors as they leave and the differences between them. Some of them look back. Lee Cobb looks back, and then Davis looked back, and a few of these other guys do. So we know the important. If you've never seen this movie, you know this guy's important, and now here he is in close shot, as we said. But those shadows over him, this is slightly tilted. Look at all those lines there, sort of tilted there, and this long dissolve with the fan on top of him. Right, that fan becomes important because it's hot in the courtroom, and the subject of the heat is this kid who's a ghost over that deliberation room. Isn't that great? And then the score comes in right now, by the way, and this is what I couldn't hear the instrument, but it's this lonely one instrument thing, which is like the lonely kid whose fate is left up to this jury room. I'm going to keep going. I have a few more. I'm going to jump now. Whenever I cut it. We're going to jump. Yeah, there we go.
I think we know that. Yeah.
I jumped ahead about 10 minutes into the movie at this point. I wanted to show a couple of shots from inside the movie and then a couple of the ending shots. This is a shot of the foreman, the jury foreman, juror number 1, looking out over all the guys. So I love this shot because it shows you most of them. It shows you some of their allegiances, some of their personality. And this movie constructs 12 personalities, which is hard to do. Ensemble cast in 90 minutes super well. Here you've got Lee Cobb and the stockbroker aligned on the left side. On the right side, you've got, some of the non-guilty in the back. And then the sports fan is sort of the focus of this. If you want to say he's the top and the center, I wouldn't argue that he's the focus, but it kind of looks like it in a way. And there he is, the subject of the American desire is the sports, or being a spectator, versus being a deliberator and a thinker. Right? And I think that's the contrast. I'm going to observe and have my desires played out in this theatrical production of the sports event, versus the guy who's thinking, Davis, who's an active participant in the not guilty vote. Now, I just want to point one thing out. I did this on my Substack. That women's bathroom in the back. What? That word women is there throughout the whole movie. and it's sitting there, and I said everything in this movie matters because the evidence matters and all the details matter. So all of the stuff in the movie matters. This women's bathroom thing, I wrote a whole essay on why I think there's a women's bathroom in this movie. And it's not just because, oh, the director wanted realism. I mean, that's one answer, but I think there's more than one answer. And Davis, the not guilty vote, is aligned so often with that women's bathroom versus the men's bathroom on the left side of the screen. So that's something to make hay about, but here are the guys deliberating.
Okay, anyone doesn't want to vote? Guy with me.
And then
Okay, then,
what happens in a lot of these scenes is we're going to cut to close shots of people. Here we have a contrast between the foreman who's deliberating, and it's empty behind him. There's just a few empty coats. It's very difficult. Watch this movie just for this guy who's kind of a minor character, but it's very hard to be the leader in a democracy because democracy is all the voices or all the masses coming together, everybody having a voice. Is there a hierarchy in democracy? And the answer is the movie's answer is kind of, I think. This guy is the top or the leader, but he's not. And it's very hard for him to be, so that emptiness behind him is fascinating. And he's facing the masses of guys, which is that shot we just saw.
Just remember that this has to be 12-0 either way. That's the law. Okay, are we ready?
And then we have the next shot. Now, this is right where they're taking the first vote, okay? So the very first vote, who says guilty and who says not guilty. And the way the shot is arranged is very obvious. I think the foreman's at the top left. He's the top dog, the leader, has the hierarchy. He's in charge of the vote. Then we have the table sort of slanting. So what's your direction? It'd be like this, downwards, right? And so the bottom of that slant downwards is the sports fan, as it turns out. Interesting. There's not as much of a hierarchy here as you would think. It's mixed up hierarchy, but the bottom vote is Davis. He's at the bottom of the screen. Maybe that means he feels like he's at the bottom. People think he's stupid. They put him at the bottom. That's how you should feel about Davis, in other words.
Voting guilty, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, that's
And then
guilty.
pause it, and then the shot cuts back, and there's the women's bathroom above him, and he is in a way the focal point of this shot. But notice how scrunched, how small, how compressed he is within those masses of guys, sweaty, probably smelly, gross bros, sneezing and sweating all over him, compressed down, and then the pressure, all the pressure of not guilty is put on this one guy to speak his mind. And by the way, this movie brings up an interesting question. How hard is it to speak your own voice in a democracy? Even though American democracy, one ideal of it is you get to say what you want. You have your own voice. But when there's peer pressure, social forces, and all those other things that are sort of shaping you who you are, like how hard is it to say what you really think? Like almost impossible sometimes, and maybe it is impossible. This is the case here. I feel like this shot is sort of telling us this about this guy.
Who's voting not guilty? 1. Right.
And there was the vote. So that was how the first vote is constructed, which was really fascinating to see the compression and where that character of Davis is placed on the screen. And I want to do one more thing, which is to go back and remind you, we did this, of the building. The movie begins outside the building and it ends outside the building. But we never leave the premises of the courthouse in this movie. We're always on the courthouse throughout the entire movie. So we start on the steps and we kind of end on the steps. It takes us outside briefly at the end. So I'm just going to, it's like sort of a full circle narrative. We enter, then we exit, but we're still there. Yet, there's a difference. And let's look at the differences. I'm going to jump forward now back to my last shot here. This is Davis exiting the courtroom. Or, excuse me, deliberation room. Long tracking shot of the table. By the way, I feel like I get lung cancer when I watch this movie. How many cigarettes do they smoke? Oh my gosh, how much did people smoke back then? But yeah, then the stockbroker's numbers and his newspaper are there. You know, we have a long dissolve, another one of those, as we exit the courtroom. Very long. The table, and then the outside of the courtroom with the pillars. But there's the knife, obviously, the key piece of evidence. And, you know, there's Davis, and we have Davis's spot on the table kind of almost dissolving out of existence. And then he's kind of next to the knife there. That knife and the pillar on top of each other are fascinating. The pillar of justice and the knife kind of slices through the initial, I'm punning, the initial votes for guilty. Anyway, the end of this movie is that these two guys who have just met are now friendly and buddies, but they say so the classic American bye so long. And by the way, Davis's name comes up here. So all the jurors, I never know what to call them because they don't have names. Here you get the actual name, and this guy has a person. It becomes more of a person here. Once you give something a name, it becomes more of a person. So these two first not guilty votes become people in a way by having character names.
What's your name? Davis. My name's McCardle.
There you go. And there's a greeting, and there's a friendliness, and there's an exchange. And look at that low camera angle, looking up at Davis. Sort of the two heroes, in a way. I guess these are the two not guilty votes. Davis has finally made it to the center. So I'm going to make a big deal of this. He's finally made it to the center of the frame. If I get your center here. The center of the frame. As before, he was at the very bottom, sort of crouched over or hidden. He has difficulty coming to the middle and getting prominence. Oh, that's a good point in the comments. No names reinforces the impersonal nature of justice. Yeah, that's good. But they become friends after deliberating, in a way.
Well, so long.
And this is our last shot. It's fascinating. They start to the left of this pillar and then cross over. It's kind of like they're going from the courthouse to the real world of the masses. And you'll see a lot of people, including, other than that second shot of the movie, it's the first time you'll see a woman in the movie. I'm going to turn this down. I don't want to play the music just yet. The music is bizarrely fascinating to me. So the sound is off now in this clip. He is walking down the steps, and he goes from being the white knight hero to entering civilian life and dissolving into an ordinary dude. So he's not a hero, as it turns out. No one acknowledges his existence after this. He is not valorized. He's not made into a celebrity in the press. Nothing like that, which could happen in other kinds of movies. But here, he is no longer the hero. The hero is dissolving into nothing. And I love that he is, if you didn't even know what was going on, you couldn't tell who's who in this shot. We are left on the courtroom steps. And I love that, again, the angles, these lines are just messed up. They're not symmetrical. And that's what I was saying earlier. Because you don't know who really did the murder, and you don't know if the accused really did the murder, I think there is some doubt and confusion at the end, as one would be in real life. You were left with uncertainty in the end, not certainty, in any sort of deliberation, including when you say someone's not guilty. And there's the final shot. So you have pause it again. You have the pillar on the left, sort of stable, and then you have sort of movement on this right side. So stasis and dynamism is like two things contrast in this movie, but the real people are moving around. Anyway, let me go back. So now I'm going to make some... I'm going to go back. I'm going to turn this on and turn it up. So, pausing it now. Listen to the end music. It is wildly weird. I can't believe the chord structure of this. I don't know the chords exactly, but it's... And there's a French horn. Listen to the French horn. It's so good. I'll turn it way up here. Oh, someone's asking me, never noticed the knife during the last dissolve, but not clear. Was it the exhibit knife or the juror's knife? I believe it was the juror's knife, because they took the exhibit, as far as I remember in the movie, they take the exhibit knife back. Or they give it back. So, what's great about this movie, of course, is that the juror breaks the law to get the law right. It's illegal to buy or own a switchblade, apparently. I think that's what they say in the movie. So he does that and he breaks the law in order to get justice. It's like a classic, like Western ideal. You got to kill people in order to uphold the law. Kind of thing. Yeah. So that's his knife. He leaves it there.
What's your name? Davis. My name's McCardle. Well, so long. So long.
All right. See, I'm going to pause it and just remind you. Listen to this French horn. It has all this dissonance going on in it when they're trying to resolve the chord. Okay, here's my analysis of this. I'll give it to you, and then you can listen to it. A lot of movie music, what would be, resolving a major chord in the 30s, maybe the 40s too. You would always have sort of happy-ish musical endings, even if it was like death and destruction at the end of a movie. It was a noir movie and everybody died or something like that. You still have this happy ending music. Go listen to the end of Citizen Kane. It's just weird, and it's just the way they did it, trying to leave audiences feeling good, and a tradition probably too. So major chord resolves. You will know what that is. You don't even have to know anything about music to know what that is. But this is 1950s. It's avant-garde, maybe some jazz chords. I don't know, but weird chords, dissonance, atonal stuff maybe. But that French horn is going to be that voice of uncertainty. It just doesn't fit in and doesn't get that chord right. Listen. Oh, okay. I mean, that's wild how that music, what I'm telling you, I think, is that amplifies the theme of the movie, which is, uncertainty, doubt, confusion, and all kinds of other things about negative things, about the deliberation in the courtroom and the resolution of that verdict. Again, one could watch this movie as a happy ending, like we got justice. He's not guilty. Great, because he was guilty, and then they were racist and bigots, and now they've found out through evidence and the reasoning process, and through people listening to each other in good democratic fashion that, hey, he's not guilty. This is wonderful. One could easily watch the movie that way, and I bet so many of the people on IMDb watch it that way, which is perfectly fine. But then you add that watching, that kind of viewing into that this movie ends with total doubt, some doubt as to the guilt or innocence, with the instability of the courtrooms or courthouse steps there. Those lines are asymmetrical, with the atonal stuff, with the weird ending where Lee Cobb sort of has a psychological breakdown and realizes that he's projecting his own hate or dislike of his son onto this other guy. So weird, so the end of this movie, I don't feel happy about it at all. More I watch it, the more I feel disturbed. But that is the nature of Greco-Roman justice, in all the way up through the American tradition right now, and maybe other systems of justice, is we don't know who done it. Right? It's opposite of a mystery movie, where in a mystery or detective fiction, we know who done it because the detective, sometimes, at least in like Sherlock Holmes fare, is a super sleuth who can rationalize everything through his brilliant individual mind. Here you have sort of a corporate mind, the jury deliberation room, rationalizing it all out. And what do they come to in the end? Uncertainty, which is what they're supposed to do. We have reasonable doubt, so he's not guilty. And that's, I think that makes this ending of this movie just wonderful. I would play that dissonance again, but you should listen to it again and get that out. The comments, by the way, are great. Dissonance in music is aligned with modernism in the arts. Yeah, that's totally right. The loss of a unified godlike perspective on truth. Yeah. Post-World War II especially, uncertainty about what truth is, and can we arrive at truth, and is truth a real thing, or is it just an illusion? We have all different perspectives on truth. All that comes up for sure. And then, as I said, you get the avant-garde music and a lot of weird stuff. Singing in the Rain has some trippy passages. Oklahoma, just general movie musicals. Atonal music, jazz chords, etc. So I think that's part of, we're just being avant-garde, but it has some cultural meanings to it, which is about maybe uncertainty. And maybe it's also antagonistic to mass culture and mass taste as well. That's another way to look at that. I have to play around with that. Yeah. The rain makes for a dramatic look on the wet stairs and pavement. Yeah, it's just rained in the movie there, hasn't it? Let's go back. I have to... My clip is long there, so I have to go... Excuse me. Go way...
Long and complex.
That's
I
mandatory.
started this clip with this, so we have to look at it again. But to look at... I've turned the volume way down on this. To look at the rain... Which we're reminded what? This is like... This one could do way too much with water and rain. Way too much. Which might mean there's not enough to do with it. But, yes, it's slippery on the staircase. Maybe it's got a sheen to it. Oh, I love that. So the rain is symbolic, as if it's cleansing, cooling, and refreshing. That's a commenter. This channel gets great comments. So, yes, justice has been served. We've been washed over by water. Things are now pristine looking. They are life-giving. And so on. So anyway, oh crap, I've just been blocked. Oh well. Hopefully you can still watch. You're still watching this, but yeah, this is yeah. Oh well. So it's just been blocked. I'll just end here. This was a lot of fun. I'll see if I can unblock it, but yeah, that was great. So hopefully you're still with me. Have fun. Yeah, that's always the threat on YouTube. What do we do? It's blocked. Jerks. Anyway, I've been going on a long time here, so I'll try to unblock it. I'll see if I can save this. Probably can. In the meantime, I hope this was helpful, those of you who are here, and enjoy. Now you know what to be said. Yes, injustice has been done. Thank you all. See you later. Bye-bye.